everybody, welcome back to my movie review series. Today we'll be discussing Flamin' Hot. Finally found one on Hulu I actually enjoyed, at least recently. Obviously pumping out one a day. I don't run out of material, especially if you can't afford to go onto the different streaming services. God forbid if I ever had enough money just to buy a $3.99 rental of a movie I wanted to review, but found a good one for today. So you know how we do it. Overall impression / grade. Then after the grade, if you've not seen the movie, would like to based off my brief overview and impressions. You're going to shut off the video. There will be spoiler alerts. We'll be discussing the plot synopsis and character development, and any similar movies or major themes. So Flamin' Hot, rated PG-13, released in 2023, is a drama movie with some historical backing. It has a runtime of 1 hour and 39 minutes. You can watch it now on Hulu. It says, why to watch? It's inspiring and hilarious. It says, Richard Montañez, the son of a Mexican immigrant, was a janitor at Frito-Lay when he came up with the idea for Flamin' Hot Cheetos. His creation, inspired by the flavors of his community, revitalizes Frito-Lay and disrupts the food industry. Released on June 9, 2003, so relatively new. Directed by Eva Longoria, produced by Davon Franklin. 91% liked it on Google, 68% liked it on Rotten Tomatoes, and 6.9 out of 10 on IMDb. So overall, what did I think? I thoroughly enjoyed this one. Again, I always like historical backings. I like someone being successful. As someone myself who's tried to start businesses and never got the big break or even a livable wage, but I like inspiring stories where it's fun to watch and see somebody go from trying really hard to actually succeeding. And so there's plenty of room for success for everybody out there, but no room for the Constitution of the United States or the Declaration of Universal Constitutional Rights or Human Rights or whatever it's called. But regardless, again, I thoroughly enjoyed the storyline. I thought the hour and 40 minutes, again, for a movie, anything under 1 hour and 30 I consider pretty short. Anything over than like 2 hours and 10 minutes I consider pretty long. And so I thought this was a sweet spot of runtime. I was intrigued the entire time. I thought the characterizations, I'm assuming it's rather historically accurate, but I thought the family dynamic between Richard and Judy was very wholesome and entertaining and good to watch, as opposed to people yelling and screaming at each other and being unsupportive. I liked the actual storyline. I thought just the overall tone was playful and fun, along with a solid plot. So I'm going to give this one A-. Well done, historical backing, good tone, good runtime, strong characterizations, and you get to see someone succeed in life. So overall, I thoroughly enjoyed this one. So if you've not seen the movie, I recommend this one. I'm going to shut it off, this video off here. There will be spoiler alerts. So you open up and you meet Richard as a youngin', and he's being coached by his grandfather to be proud of his last name, proud of who he is, and he is going to school, and he meets Judy very early on, probably 8, 9, 10 years old, and so they're going to grade school, and they're getting picked on for eating bean burritos. They get called beaners and wetbacks, and so there's some cultural. The time frame, it was released this year, but I think it's probably I don't know. I want to say the 60s to the 80s. Again, I just don't know that you can look up his actual age. But I think the bulk of the movies, when he's an adult, I think that's in the 80s. And so not really exactly sure the exact time frame, but somewhere in Southern California. But regardless, he's going to school. He gets made fun of for these burritos. One of those fat white kids slaps it out of his hand. He goes the next day. His mom gives him 2 burritos. You get some background that his father, Facho, was rather abusive, and it's the same actor that plays Marcus Alvarez in the Mayans series, which I'll be finishing that up. I'm just waiting for the last episode to be released on the 20th. Then I'll review that one as well. But I like him as an actor. But the father is abusive to Richard, and his mom gives him extra burritos to go to school so he can have one even if the bully slaps it out of his hands. And he realizes he can sell them for $0.25 a piece and make some money. And so he begins hustling some burritos at a young age, and then that's kind of just like the background story. You get some background of his life, and then you flash forward to a little bit later, and him and Judy are doing some crime. He's involved with drug dealing. He's got some other Chicano movement type of characters in there. But they're running away from the police, and then they don't really show him in jail. I don't know if he went to jail or whatever, but regardless, they should have a scene running from the police, and then Judy gets pregnant. And so once Judy gets pregnant, Richard has to clean up his act and start doing something different. And so he starts, handing out flyers, handing out resumes, trying to get any job he can, and he's really struggling to get employment. And so he goes to his old friend, or Bato, or whatever I don't know which one, I don't know if it's Cardinal, Bato, Jefe, I don't know which one we're going with this time. But Tony Romero, kind of like the big homie on the block. And so Richard's going back there, you're kind of like, I have to make money, what do I do? And Tony's like, you got kids now. And so you do have like a fast forward, he ends up having 2 sons. And so Tony's like, what do you do? You have kids, and Richard's like, I need a job, and Tony's like, you shouldn't be selling. And then kind of the other hombres around the crew is like, not everyone can have a job with a hairnet. And so Tony works at the Frito-Lay factory, and Richard's like, hey man, can you get me a job or an interview or put in a good word? And so Richard ends up getting an interview through Tony. He buys, some Goodwill suits and jackets or whatever, which I'm a big fan of doing that, honestly. Again, I haven't worn a suit in years, but I don't think I've ever spent more than like, Target had like one time it was like 3 suits for like $100 or maybe $150 or something. So I've probably never gone over like $40 for a suit, maybe 50. But I was actually like thrifting, but like actually buying stuff I would wear. But regardless, he gets some clothes, and he goes into the interview, and he gets this application, and he can barely read English. And so he takes the application home and has his wife Judy fill it out for him. Goes back in there, gets the interview, and he's like, I went to this high school, and the interview was like, oh no way, I went to that high school. The principal so and so was such a meanie. And he was like, oh yeah, I hated that guy too. And he was like, the interview was like, it was a she. And so Richard's like, hey man, I maybe don't have a high school diploma, but I'll work hard, and I'll do everything I can. And so he gets the job as a maintenance technician, as a janitor, and he starts working really, really hard. And he's really intrigued and enthralled by all the equipment and learning all of the stuff. And so you kind of meet the factory dudes, and Tony talks about how like they're the lowest level. You have the floor managers, then you have like the executives or the whoever's. But Richard meets this guy who's been there for a long time. His name is Clarence. He's really good. He's like a maintenance, he's like an engineer repair guy for like the machines. And so Richard becomes close with Clarence. He's like, hey man, he approaches him at lunch one day. He's like, hey man, I'd really like if you could teach me extra stuff. I'll hang around after my shifts. Just give me any information you can. And so Clarence reluctantly kind of agrees. I just thought Richard's personality characterization throughout the whole thing was strong. Especially, I really like the family dynamic with Judy as well. But I thought there was no off-putting characters for me at all in this one. And so Lonnie Mason is kind of the floor manager. Roger Enrico is the Italian-American that runs the entirety of Frito-Lay. James Finley is one of Roger's senior executives. Some other lower-level workers, Hector and Nacho. Definitely recognize the actor who ever played Hector. I don't know from where. But regardless, that's what starts going on. And so then you get like an 8 to 10 year fast forward where Richard is still in the same position that he is now. And so the plot really develops into, the economy is getting bad, the Frito-Lay is laying off a lot of people, they might even shut down the entire factory. And so they're really not having much upward momentum in their careers or in their jobs. And so Tony gets laid off again, Hector and Nacho gets laid off. That kind of happens. Richard loses the power one day, and so Roger Enrico, the president of Frito-Lay, has this like motivational or just a corporate internal video to motivate employees or whatever. And so Lonnie rolls in, a TV on a stand. Like again, like I'm almost 30. If you remember, like high school, they would bring in like a TV like that, and they just show this corporate excitement or morale boosting video. And so Richard's the only one that really watches it and really pays attention. But he's like, show innovation, innovate and show initiative. And so Richard gets inspired from that. He's picking up his 2 sons from school one day. I don't even have them up there. But he has 2 sons. I didn't catch their names. And one is probably through the bulk of the movie 6 to 8, and the other one's probably like 10 to 12. And so they're eating at a park one day. The 12-year-old had gotten beat up at school because he's sad about being Mexican. There's another scene where they're at the beginning kind of hustle to get jobs or employment before he gets Frito-Lay. He gets called a wetback. So again, more commentary just on racism. But regardless, he gets inspired from watching people at the park, and they're all putting authentic Mexican spices on their different snacks or food. And so he gets inspired. And now Judy works at like a clothing store, and she's picking up shifts. But they get inspired to start making their own flaming hot salt dry rub seasoning. And so you have another scene where Richard's dad, Vacho, kind of sits him down. He gets offered like a full-time janitor duty at a church somewhere, and I guess Vacho going from abusive alcoholic as a father to finding the Jesus thing. Then now once Richard kind of gets upset, like, oh wow, I can be the king of the janitors. But regardless, him and Vacho have a little tense interaction, and Judy stands up for him. Again, I thought the relationship between Richard and Judy was very well done. And so at the end, they says they were together for like 48 years, so it seems rather accurate. But regardless, that's what happens. They have a tense interaction, and they leave the cookout, or like just the family gathering, Judy and Richard. And so they're starting to develop this spice and seasoning. They go through a bunch of trial and error, and then they finally find the spice, or the hotness level and the taste profile that really suits their children and their neighbors and friends. And so Richard kind of, accesses the executive book or just call log or whatever, and finds Roger and Rico's phone number and calls him, and he's like, the secretary is like, oh, so you're the VP for the Western District. He's like, no, I work at this plant. So you're the plant director. No, I'm a maintenance tech. So you're a janitor. He's like, yeah, but I have a really good innovative idea. I watched Roger's video, and I really wanted to have a shot, or if I can talk to him, that'd be great. And so she pauses for a second, then puts him through. And Roger and Rico's, like, let's do it, let's give it a shot. And so Richard packs up a bunch of samples and sends it off to him. A lot of the plant managers and other employees are all furious at him for breaking rank and going straight to the president, and knowing that it could backfire and cause the plant to get shut down or for them to lose their jobs. And so he goes. And he sends some samples, a little like scene of them praying that it goes well in the post office, and then Roger gets the samples and he thoroughly enjoys them. And so he calls Richard back up at the plant, and he's shocked. Richard's shocked to hear from him, and he's kind of down and out, feeling like he's going to mess up other people's careers or jobs. This doesn't work out, and so Roger's like, I liked him. This definitely could be something here. I'm going to be in town in 2 weeks. Can you give me a presentation? And so Richard's like, absolutely. And so Judy and him go to the library, get a bunch of books about business. He doesn't know anything about business. He has no business acumen. But they go and they start learning about business, and they prepare for this meeting. 2 weeks go by, and Roger shows up. And then they have a couple scenes of Roger like parting the seas of people. Like Roger's like, I want to talk to Richard, and he's like walking through with all of this stuff in order. And he's like, that's not really exactly how it happened. And he's just kind of like fumbling around and trying to do his best. And so he gives the presentation. He's got graphs and slideshows. They ask him, how much market share do you think you can get? And he's like, this much. Like they show him like talking over just like him stocking the shelves, thinking like this much market share on the shelves, which actually isn't that bad of a metric, to be honest. I mean, for someone who doesn't know, it isn't like research the market cap or the market size, and he's like, here's, if you have 100% of your shelf space is this product, he's like, this much, really wouldn't be that bad of a metric, honestly. And so, you can easily translate that to a number. But regardless, he kind of goes off script. He's got the projector, and again, it's like in the 80s or 90s, and so he turns on the lights. He's like, I don't know much about market share. I don't know much about business, but I know these spices are authentic to our people, to our culture, and they move really well, and we should give it a go. And so Roger kind of ends the meeting, playfully, like respecting Richard saying, this much market share, and so they end up ordering 5,000 cases from the meeting. And so Richard's all excited. He's finally got a shot. He's seen his product roll out on the assembly line, and then they stock the shelves with them, and then they don't sell. And so Richard gets a call. Richard and Lonnie get a call from James. And James like, man, you're just not moving. The product's just not moving. That's the hold up. That's the only thing that's going bad, which we're gonna yank him off the shelves. And Lonnie and Richard's like, can we get like one more week is all we're asking. And so Richard's kind of down and out. Clarence gives him, a pick me up. Richard gets up there, gives a kind of motivational speech. And it's like, we're gonna take all the product that's not sells and we're gonna distribute it ourselves. And so Richard has Tony, who's back in the gang and drug dealing scene, come in and help them, and then just scene of them distributing it through all the different communities, giving it out for free. Like, hey, first one's free. If you like them, give us a shot. Buy one at the convenience store or whatever. And so they do that, and then Richard has some narration over Roger getting the sales numbers of Southern California. So after they're down and out, he's like, thinking that's going to get pulled. And then once they did their self-distribution and marketing, that the sales numbers are starting to explode in Southern California. So they have kind of two kind of scenes where he kind of talks over in like Cholo language, like American, Spanish, English, or English and Spanish mixture, but kind of just like acting out like what the scenes would have been, and then just kind of like there's kind of like cut scenes of like imagination, fake things. And so when he's talking, when the scene with Roger getting the sales numbers for the Flamin' Hot Cheetos in Southern California, he acts like they're gonna beat up James and choke him with a wire and hit him with a cast iron fire poker. He's like, no, that's not how really what happened. And so James is in some hot water for not knowing the sales numbers or how the product is doing in Southern California, but they're doing very well now. And so Richard gets another phone call from Roger at the plant, and he's still working as the maintenance technician. And Roger's like, we're gonna need some more cases. And Richard's excited, like, how many more? 5,000? And Roger kind of chuckles and is like, no, we need about 5 million. And so Richard just, screams in exultation, is really, really happy. And they start making the products. And so they're distributing them, and now you're getting to the resolution of the movie. And so he's still working as the maintenance tech. And then Clarence gets called in, and Clarence finally gets promoted to like the factory manager or to like the head dude, I think Lonnie's job or something different, just a higher job that he's been wanting for years. And Richard's like, did they say anything about me? And Clarence is like, nah, man, sorry. And so Lonnie's like, hey, Richard, you got a job now. Richard's like, I won an interview for the maintenance tech or whatever Clarence was doing. And Lonnie's like, no, man, I need you to clean this room up and see whatever. And so he goes up to this room, and Roger's standing there, and breaks the big news to him that he's getting super promoted, and he gets promoted to director of multicultural marketing for, I don't know if the whole company or whatever. But he gets an office, he gets a little name plaque, and he's finally made it. And so he calls Judy, and he's like, we're gonna need some more ties, and Judy gets that. It means that he's got promoted and has a solid, stable job now. And so I really like the family dynamic is really strong, and then they finally have relief of financial stability. And so then you get some just kind of cut scenes of the actual Richard, and he's going out giving tips, and he's saying there's no such thing as just a busboy or just a server. Every job has value, which is completely fucking true. But regardless, that's kind of the resolution of the movie. And you get some stats. He worked there. He retired in 2019. He was with Judy for 48 years. They raised the 2 sons. I don't know if they might have had a third. But he was a top executive at Frito-Lay he made it to the top VP or something, and was doing very well. And so they just show a different, kind of the different palettes or the different SKUs of products that he produced, and then you get the credits of being directed by Eva Longoria. So I thoroughly enjoyed this one. This was well done for me. Strong story and strong characterizations and a fun, playful, upbeat tone, good runtime, and just strong characterizations. So thank you for watching my review of Flamin' Hot, and I will see you on the next one.